For many years now, Russ and Craig have had many wide-ranging conversations with folks from all over the gaming world. This is one of those conversations.
D6G, the Lost Chapter.
So, Russ, Easter was just last weekend.
It was.
And if you look behind the counter, there's still a lot of those Easter egg donuts.
Oh, yeah. Are they fresh, though? I don't know if that's right.
I don't know. They've been sitting there for a week. But
hey, Craig,
it reminds me.
Craig,
what, Russ? What?
I think I saw that guy in the corner within a reality TV show.
Oh my God! I think it's Beverly.
Wait,
is that Michael Stagliano?
Michael, hey, how's it going, man?
It's good, guys. It's good. I love that we're in Dunkin' Donuts. My favorite decaf out of all of the coffee in the world. Pumped to be here.
Excellent.
And I was on a reality show 100 years ago, so you're half correct.
We'll want to talk more about the main show later. That's fantastic. Because I was get confused if it was you or your brother because it's hard to tell you apart from it.
You guys, I get confused.
Thing is throwing us off.
Yeah, but clearly all American male right here because he enjoys Dunkin' Donuts coffee way more than Tim Hortons. Just not even in the same.
Yeah. And I mean, you're on the West Coast and you're a giant Dunkin' Donuts fan. That's huge too, right? I mean,
I know. And look, it's probably worth mentioning. I've kind of lived all over America, obviously, including the East Coast. But yeah, I'm currently in the West Coast. There isn't. I couldn't even find a Dunkin' Donuts if I wanted to. But yeah, man, I still prefer
this
Dunkin'.
In the middle of the universe, right here.
That's right. Where we are now. I'm loving it.
We're all connected. It's it's.
There's that back door, and it leads right to here.
That's brilliant. It's a brilliant design concept by them.
So, Michael, do you ever enjoy a pastry here at Dunkin' Donuts, or do you restrict yourself to decaf coffee?
I'm not a huge donut guy, though. I got to be honest. So I got married back in 2014, and my mother-in-law loves donuts, and she's kind of converted me into a donut lover. So I will now go for a chocolate glaze, or I'm kind of more of a just a donut hole, just straight up donut hole.
Munchkins,
because they're almost like it's a Jim Gaffigan bit, actually, but they're like. It's like little donut vitamins. They don't even count if they're just donut.
Well, right. You get all the goodness of a donut, but you get less of the guilt until you eat 10. And then
but literally, if you eat 6 munchkins, you're like, well, this. I mean, it doesn't even feel like I ate a donut.
right.
Brilliant.
It is brilliant. It is brilliant. So might as well have 44.
Exactly.
Well, have you guys seen? So we have to talk about this movie. So while we're here enjoying our coffee and one donut or munchkin. So have you guys both seen Ready Player One yet?
Saw it for the second time last night.
I saw it for the first time last night.
Right,
Did you guys read the book? That's the biggest.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, let's just start off by warning our listeners here. Warning, spoiler alert. We will be coming through with many, many spoilers. Yeah, for both the book probably as well as the movie. So if you've not seen Ready Player One, just pause it now. But as a geek, it's pretty much hard not to talk about this film or the book. I mean, most of us have already read the book, but the movie too, just chock full of so many cool references. So what were your guys' Michael, what were your expectations going in? Had you read the book before?
I read the book, but it had been some time, at least 5 years. So, I vaguely knew what was going to happen. And I had the benefit, and I use that word really specifically because my twin brother, Steve, had seen it and was like, hey, there's just some things that I didn't love. He told me what they were. And I'm sure you guys have all had this experience, but I did the most glorious thing you can ever do going in to see a movie. I lowered my expectations. And because I did that, you guys, I mean, I got emotional. It blew. I loved it so much. Yeah. And there were certainly some little things that bumped me, but they had way less of an impact bumping me because I had been pre-warned about them. And so I fully loved it. What about you guys?
So my thing was I loved the book. Yeah. And the big thing about the book as a child of the 80s, right? So I literally spent my entire teenage years in the 80s. So one of the things the book appeared.
Halliday, by the way.
What's that?
Russ is James Halliday.
So one of the things that really spoiler number one, the first challenge in the book is one of my favorite things because as they were describing the clue, literally in my head, while reading the book, I was like, that's the Tomb of Horrors. Oh my God, that's the Tomb. And it was a tomb. I'm like, oh my God, it was a Tomb of Horrors. So I really wanted this to be
Tomb of Horrors, Russ.
The Tomb of Horrors is one of the original and is still to this day considered one of the most impossible dungeons for Dungeons and Dragons. And it was originally created by TSR back in the 80s. It was super hard. And anybody who played D&D and played with modules back then at least tried it once and was killed many and had their
TPKs. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yep.
So it was well known as like the hardest dungeon, and it's been reprinted in the Tales from the Yawning Portal. It's actually in there now for 5e if you want to try it out. It's pretty neat. But anyway, so I was full on 80s mode, and I knew also, though, from seeing the previews in the movie, that there were clearly elements of later decades in this film. Right, you could see the the occasional Overwatch character and other people, and so I was like, oh, they're going to try to appeal to a younger audience, right? So they might move up a lot of this stuff out of the 80s. Right. And I like, as long as they have a few 80s nods in there, and as long as they at least reference Tomb of Horrors, I'll be okay.
Well, so what did you think then? Did you think there was a good, because there was well, go ahead and finish your thought.
So
really curious.
So right from the beginning, I knew I was in good shape when the opening music opened up and it was 80s music. Yeah, as soon as it was 80s soundtrack from the very beginning, I was like, they've got me. I'm in. Right. And it was great because they did a good job of serving both groups of fans. So what they did was the puzzles and the references were all 80s, right? But then the new stuff, because the Oasis has been around for so long, of course, newer skins and other things would be brought into it. So they brought in a lot of other cool stuff that you see in the previews, but at its core, it's about the 80s. And the bits that I loved, like I caught that the back of the mail truck, that logo is the face from the door, the classic artwork of Tomb of Horrors.
Shut up.
That's right. I didn't know.
So I caught it. I literally leaned over to Kit and I said, that is it. So the thing that keeps showing with the computer locking, that was Tomb of Horrors. And the main bad guy in Tomb of Horrors is a lich. Now in the book, they fight the lich in the Joust video game. But in this, they fight a lich in The Shining. I'm totally cool with that because that lich is probably a reference to Tomb of Horrors.
Hang on, Russ. You said you've seen it twice now, right?
Craig's seen it twice. I've only seen it once.
Oh, I'm sorry. And so
you look the same though. We look the same. You may not be familiar with that problem, but we look identical. So.
No, I can actually. I don't think I've seen pictures of you, but I just know your voices.
Just give me crap because you have.
So your first time you spotted the logo on the back of the
but I know too. I mean, like I said, so one of the things about this is my super nerd power, right? Is like because I grew up with D&D, like in the 80s, like it was the D&D books were like I don't even know how to describe it. Like I lived in those books. Like I'd go to bed every night reading through them, looking. So the artwork is indelibly burned into my brain. All the artwork is. So probably words and phrases wouldn't have been. Like if they had used a line out of one of the, I don't know, like something written on a wall said by a magic mouth in Tomb of Horrors, I'd have missed it. But because it was the actual art and that actual mouth, I just saw it. I caught it.
I knew it, and I didn't know where I knew it from. That's crazy.
Yeah, it was. So the fact, and I loved it because they were dialing in on the truck, right, with that image. So that kind of stuff happened. So they switched it to The Shining, right, from the Tomb of Horrors,
right,
and it wasn't it wasn't Joust, which, but although there was a nod to Joust because they're going through the Atari cartridge at the end,
right?
Joust, nope, But anyway, so I jumped in. Craig, what did you think? What were your expectations? And what you think?
Well, I kind of knew. Of course, you knew going in that there was going to be like a big car race, and I had read a lot of the preliminary stuff that said they had sort of foregone some of the less visually stunning challenges from the book to make them more, to give them more of an opportunity to expand on the medium. And so I just kind of went in and exactly the situation Michael was in. It's got to have been 5 years for me also. So I remembered that I loved the book and I remembered the concept of it, but I vaguely remember like there was a spaceship, which there wasn't in the movie, and things like that. But I didn't really remember much specifically.
What about the difference between, not the difference, did you think it was going to be like all 80s nostalgia stuff, or did you think there were going to be, kind of the modernized plugs? And were you happy with the balance?
Yeah, I was very happy with the balance. I had heard, and again, I do a lot of digging, which is bad, but I do a lot of digging before I go see a movie.
Yes, that is bad. Don't do that.
Yeah, don't do that.
What does that mean? But I did. And so I knew that it was going to be a balance. So I went in knowing that there was going to be a lot of, like, you've got the Halo stuff running around in the big, in the previews and everything. And I thought it was great. I loved it. Like Russ said, it kind of it would make sense that there was more than, the book does a great job of explaining why it's almost all 80s. And without going into that much exposition, which kind of would be boring, I don't know how you would do it visually.
Sure.
It makes more sense that there would be sort of more of a spread of interest levels and genres and things like that. But also, I think, as Russ said, it kind of brings in more audiences and kind of opens it up for a younger audience, which I totally get and I'm fully in favor of. So I thought they did a great job. I thought the trade-offs that they had made were great and made a lot of sense to me, and I didn't have any trouble really with anything. And I've got to say, like, when I saw Black Panther twice and loved it the first time, and the second time I was like, oh, there's some flaws in this script that make it sort of slow and boring in the middle. When I saw Ready Player One, it was great and I loved it, and I came out going like, wow, I'm going to see that again. And then when I went and saw it last night,
even better.
I
100%.
Yeah, which you've got to know, right? You've got to go in expecting, you know what? Because it's so Easter egg oriented.
Right.
You're going to just enjoy it. And I knew I don't do as much digging as I used to, but I did do some digging. And so there was one article that I only read the headline of because I was like, I can't do that. But it was like, these 3 movies are in the opening scene. And one of them was Highlander. And I was like, oh, it's Highlander. There's got to be something from Highlander. What would it be? It's got to be in the New York scene. Okay. It's got to be Silver Cup, right? So the first time I was watching it, I'm like, where's Silver Cup? And I didn't see it because I got all wrapped up in which is awesome.
Yeah.
Like I didn't have the distance to sit back and which is great because I wouldn't have enjoyed it nearly as much. But last night I was watching it and I saw Silver Cup slide by and I was like, oh my God, there's Silver Cup. And the funny thing is the first time I saw it, I was by myself. And last night I saw it with my son, who's 7.5, and with our friend Pete. And Pete's hilarious because Pete is such a fast reader that I told him that I was going to see it. I told him Friday night that I was going to see it, and he was like, "Oh yeah, that looks interesting. I want to go see that." And I was like, "I in good conscience, I can't let you see it until you've read the book."
100. Good job. Yes, that's very
well. This guy is so he's an insomniac, so that always helps. But
that's good.
He is such a fast reader. He read the entire book yesterday.
Oh my God!
So he's like, he called me at 4. He's like, "We're gonna go see it at 6:30, right?" Okay, good, because I just finished the book. And so he had it like super fresh in his memory. So at the end, he talks a lot, which is the only negative thing in the movies. So when there was a difference, he would be like, well, that wasn't the same. Or, well, I really wish that guy had died to make it a little more serious. But even he walked away going, you know what? Even fresh in my memory, I love that movie. It was great. And it was so much more fun watching it with like another geek right next to me. Like I would hear him giggle at the moment I wanted to giggle. And there's like, you know what? I don't care who's sitting around me, whether they get it or not. I'm just like giggling maniacally through this whole movie every time I see something that I recognize. And damn it, Russ, if that face on that van wasn't just itching at the back of my head that entire movie.
There were things that I yelled out loud, and my family like, "What is wrong with you?" Like when they used the krill from Krull, I was like, "Oh my God!" Like there were moments. And Craig, you mentioned something that I thought was really masterfully done in the movie. So you mentioned how they have to explain. They didn't want to do exposition to explain why he was so into the 80s, right? And my favorite scene, and I literally teared up, was in the end when they're in his room, when they're in his room, and they're panning around. I mean, that was my room. Like there's so much. Like again, another spot, and I caught it because my brain doesn't forget images. The Tomb of Horrors map is on the floor next to him playing his Intellivision, not Atari.
Oh my gosh, good.
His Intellivision. Behind them is a Lady Hawk poster. There's Larry Elmore art on the front wall. I mean, it's like everything. And you can see his room is so stacked with just everything that was to be a geek in the 80s. Like it's all of it, like just condensed down, so flawlessly done that it's like that was if you were a nerd in the 80s, like that was your room.
Yeah.
And it was just so cool. And you can tell this guy, like many nerds, he just grew up on all this stuff and he never left it. And it was just so well done. And I just, that was such a powerful moment. I don't even know.
I'm curious if you guys will empathize with what my feeling was watching it. And I debriefed with my brother today. You know, and I was like, it's probably the first time in my life that I've seen a movie where, and I fully understand the sentence I'm about to say, where I felt like it was made for me in a way that if you weren't me, you were going to miss all of these amazing, references. Yeah. And for me, it was like, I was born in 84, so I missed probably a lot of stuff, but even like there was a little Mortal Kombat token, the Ninja Turtles, obviously Master Chief from Halo and Overwatch. And so look, when I read the book, I remember feeling like, I wanted to be, oh my gosh, now I'm blanking on his name. Will? No, Watts? Wade. I felt like I wanted to be Wade. You know what I mean? I was super stoked about the adventure and the world, but the movie experience for me was like really personal. Like I couldn't believe how much it felt like my experience with it was all nostalgia stuff, like from the last 20 years. Yeah. You know what I mean? And that's a really special experience to have with a movie, and it sounds like that's what you guys had too.
I was curious to ask you about that, Mike, because I know you're just a tad younger than us. So you're like coming of age decade is really the mid 90s to early 2000s, right? So like for you, but it still touched you, which I think is awesome.
Yeah,
I think what they did a really good job with was, even though I'm forgetting the main guy's names now, though, the creator of the Oasis, Halliday, yeah. So even though Halliday was definitely our generation, like Craig and my generation, they did a good job of sort of bringing it forward with other stuff.
Yeah.
So that there was a nice blend that I think really, really worked all the way through. And
what's interesting to me is like with shows like Stranger Things, there is this big pocket of pop culture that, for people that are my age, that are whatever our generation is. I think I'm a millennial. I don't even know anymore, but like, I felt like we have such huge access to what the 80s was. And a good example of that is like Space Invaders. Like I never played Space Invaders in an arcade, but I feel like I know exactly what Space Invaders is, or I can at least identify with it because it's like tied into Back to the Future and all of Jurassic Park and E.T.
and the thing about
all these,
Well, the thing too is cool is like Street Fighter for our generation when we were teenagers was in an arcade cabinet, but for your generation, Street Fighter was just as awesome on the
console,
NES, right?
Exactly.
So when he uses Hadouken in the end of the movie, it's like, that's awesome. That got both our generations, right? So like they did a really good job of like of bridging those things. Like, and who doesn't know who Mechagodzilla is? And Gundam was huge in the 80s and the 90s, right? So you could tell they picked a couple. I thought one of the funniest things, and this is the other thing that blew me away, was their ability to get the licenses for this stuff.
I was constantly thinking about that. I was like,
screenwriter, right? You're thinking about that all the time. Like,
my head was exploding. I was like, how can you just say Millennium Falcon in a movie? Like, how did they pay Disney $9 million for that one line of dialogue?
In the background, like there's a couple spots where. But here's the thing: my youngest daughter read the book 3 times, so she loved the book, which I thought was interesting because
how old is she?
She's 13.
Wow. But so that's a great age to.
But she loved
dive in that book. Yeah.
And what she did, and I played D&D with her, and we played Yawning Portal, and I told her to, and she went, Dad, did you know Tomb of Horrors is in the book? I was like,
unprompted.
Right. But she saw the movie. Her most disappointing point was that Captain Crunch wasn't in the film.
What?
She's like
Captain cereal Crunch from the cereal box?
Yes. She's like, Captain Crunch is so awesome. He was so badass in the book, Dad. He didn't show. I was like, well, let me tell you a theory I have about Captain Crunch. I'm kind of thinking that most cereal companies don't want their main logo like killing stuff. So I bet it was a hard sell to be like, yeah, we're gonna have the captain.
Yeah.
Ass. That's so really funny. That's my theory about the captain. But it would have been cool because it was. They did have a lot in the book. They had a lot more of those crazy, and I love that in the book. Like Voltron showed up, but he kind of sucked. Like love that in the movie either. Yeah. But Gundam's a great choice, so I was fine with that. What were some of the most surprising moments? Like, what was you mentioned the licensing, which I was blown away by. I mean, I knew they have a lot of it, but like it seemed like Microsoft was all in. You know, there was Gears of War, there was
of course, yep,
Halo and everything else. Obviously, Blizzard was in. We saw both World of Warcraft and Overwatch. What were some of the stuff you were excited to see, but then also surprised because of licensing or whatever?
That's a good question. I mean, mainly because it's such a constant torrent. It's tough to like pick out. Right. You know, like I knew the Iron Giant was going to be in there, but that was, or maybe another way to say it is, I don't know about you guys, but my audience was hook, line, and sinker. I mean, constantly, maybe not screaming, but at least gasping and laughing and chuckling and pointing. And the Iron Giant was a big one for my audience. Everyone was like, "Oh my gosh, that's so cool! He looks so cool." So that one stands out. I guess it was kind of the first big one, maybe. Yeah, I don't know. What about you guys? What were your big
Craig? What was your big ones you saw?
The Silver Cup was.
Yeah.
Oh right, yeah. You mentioned that.
Yeah, and then I don't know. I love the Jurassic Park Tyrannosaurus Rex. I love that in like a flash of a moment, you knew exactly that was the Jurassic Park Tyrannosaurus Rex.
Yep.
And like recreating the Jeep scene, where it's chasing the Jeep through the thing.
There was a moment towards the end when it's all going down, the final battle, and they cut to the van and like all the people on the street. And there was this moment where there's these 4 kids.
Yes.
And they're like doing fight moves. And then it cuts into the Oasis and it's the 4 Ninja Turtles.
Right.
And before it cut to in the Oasis and I saw those 4 kids, I was like, that would have been my brother and our 2 best friends growing up. Awesome. And then they cut to the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And that was one of the moments where I like got teary eyed. I was like, that is so personal to me. Like I grew up with not just every Ninja Turtle, but like, you know, the pizza thrower and the van and like the sewer layer and Shredder. I mean, so to see that, it just, that to me was a big moment. And then I'm a huge fan of The Shining and I love horror. So just as soon as they drop into the Overlook Hotel, I was like, those were probably the 2 biggest ones. It was pretty powerful. It was awesome.
There was so many little things like the mashup started to get me. So like, and this is, I was glad they did it early. So you know how he was driving the DeLorean, obviously from Back to the Future, but Nicole and I are huge Knight Rider fans. And so when he turned the one corner and you saw the red light going back and forth in front of the DeLorean, I was like, holy crap, they're blending it together. And that's when I noticed that he has a Thundercats logo on his belt buckle.
No, I missed that. Did he really?
Yeah, like just so much. Now I didn't catch, I read this later, that his belt buckle is also Han Solo's belt buckle with a Thundercat logo on the buckle. But I just thought I saw the Thundercat thing because there's a couple points where it shoots up, like you're shooting like below, looking up, like sort of like the heroic pose, you know, and you just can't miss the but like a lot of, but the one thing I wish they could have got the license for and they didn't because it was conspicuous in its absence.
Yeah.
Clearly Nintendo was out.
Yes. Yeah.
Because there was no
Pokemon Mario Kart once.
They mentioned it, but there's like there's Pokemon, no Mario, no Luigi.
Zelda.
I mean, that's sort of, it was conspicuous in its absence, right? You can't talk about that time period and not have Nintendo in it. So it was unfortunate that Nintendo wouldn't make a deal or wanted to or whatever the deal was. But so did you have any friends who didn't care for it? And if so, or maybe non-geek, does anybody know any non-geeks who enjoyed it?
I don't.
No. I don't know anybody who like. Well, I mean, it's only been out for a week and 2 days, so
you
know, maybe the other way to say it too is like any non-geek. I was gonna say gamer, but it's really more geek.
Yeah,
you know, like people that don't like scary movies are not going to go see a horror movie, and I feel like it's just not. People that are not geeks just will not get this movie. I think so. I mean, look, it's a big Steven Spielberg, like kind of summer blockbuster. Like I'm sure it's, you know, getting the marketing that everyone is going to at least be vaguely interested. But yeah, I'd be really curious what someone that is not a gamer, frankly, just like my wife, like she's a banker and not a gamer and a geek. I'm really curious to see what she would think if she'd be like, I don't know what was going on at all.
Did you get her to go? Do you think you get her to go it? or she's like,
yeah,
no.
though it's tough. We've got an 18-month-old and one on the way.
Yeah,
so
that's
like
a tough age.
and just going to see a movie, like we kind of got to pick something that we're both going to love, Yeah.
All right, Craig, do you know anybody that didn't? I only know people who went and liked it, but they're all nerds.
Right.
How is it? You know what? How is it doing on Rotten Tomatoes?
Let's go find out.
I'm going to look
Let's
too.
go on over to Rotten Tomatoes and
Rotten Tomatoes. Good thing we can do that right here from Dunkin' Donuts on our phones.
So 74 critic, 80% audience. That's actually
that's awesome.
Yeah, that's really good, especially the critic piece. I feel like
74 is great.
Yeah, and obviously audience 80% is pretty accurate.
Right,
it's pretty good too.
Yeah, I think that's awesome.
Yeah,
that's
I'm happy.
I'm glad to see that. Yeah, I'll take that. That's a win for especially a super nerdy thing like that.
Right.
Yeah.
So, any disappointments? Are we just all like, go see this? It's fantastic. Or is there any?
No, you know what? Look, here's what I would say. I'll start with this. I'm quite familiar with what it is like to adapt something from a book and, look at things structurally and how does the story lay out and what are our big character arcs and stuff. And I'll start by saying this was a tough adaptation, and that's not any profound statement. Like that's if you read the book, you could probably imagine that it would be tough to adapt. And I mean, like special effects aside, just, it's a story that has split real estate, right? Like a lot of the time is in the Oasis, but you still need to service kind of the emotional story with the characters, which is in the real world. So I actually thought that they did, and maybe as a blanket statement, I'll say, I thought this was like a 9 out of 10 in terms of adaptation. Like, I don't think you could do it much better than they did it. I thought they were just absolutely crushed it. The only thing that I think they missed is, in the book, there's time for the relationship between Artemis and Parzival to breathe a little. And, like by the time he says, hey, look, like, I love you, I'm into you, it's totally warranted and it feels pretty great. Mm-hmm. And I got to be honest, in the movie adaptation, I don't know. I'd be curious what the actual minute number is. When he's like, hey, they're in that, the nightclub, right? Or whatever, I forget the name of the something globe, the distracted globe. They're in there. Yeah. And he's like, look, I love you. I was like, ooh, that did not feel earned yet. And I think it's because the scene before that, maybe not directly before that, but was the race when like Artemis pulls up and he's in the DeLorean and he looks over and he's saying to H like, oh my gosh, that's Artemis. And he talks about her in a way that's like, certainly he idolizes her, but not at all that he like knows her. You know what I mean? Right. It's just, and I remember from the book that like he has, studied her a bunch and I think they'd even chatted, but they're not claned up, like blah, blah, blah. But it at least felt like they were very familiar with each other and that it was earned. And I just felt like in the movie, I don't know, it felt manufactured, like it felt kind of flat to me. So that was the only thing I really bumped on at all.
Yeah, Craig, do you have any disappointments?
No. I mean, I hate to just fanboy out and seem like I just loved it all. I mean, you know what? I wish the Nolan, the bad guy, I wish he was a little more like a little less cartoonish, maybe.
Yeah. You mean his avatar or his actual?
No, his character. I found his character to be kind of like not overly threatening, I guess.
Yeah.
And I mean, in the book, obviously, they're actually killing people more.
Well, I think that would have solved it, because my biggest disappointment was that the two brothers from Japan weren't in Japan and weren't killed.
Right.
So because Parzival wasn't quite as silly in the book as he was in the movie.
Yeah, for sure.
Where he's just like, hey, my real name is no. That's what actually happened was they started figuring out who the High Five were, and killing them. Yeah. Right. And so it got much scarier, right, in the book, and made the villain more villainous because, whoa, he's actually killing Gunters. He would do that, like it's beyond. It takes to another level. So I wish none of them died, right? So it wasn't really, when no one can die, it doesn't make it quite as scary. And then but that takes the villain down a level. And I think it also made Parzival look a little less smart.
Yeah.
By being that sloppy,
you know what? So. I totally forgot about that in the book they die, and from the screenwriting standpoint, they call that, it's just stakes, right? It's like if there are pro tags that are dying, the threat feels immediate and big.
Right.
And if they're not, and they're just like kind of running in a van and they send out this chick with black hair that's like kind of knows Kung Fu, like she,
she's a killjoy, so you got to be a little worried.
Right. Yeah, you're right. That could have been, I agree that actually, you know what? It makes me curious now. Is it PG-13 or R?
It's PG-13.
PG-13.
Yeah, and
you can still kill people off camera though. You can have their avatars blink out, and you can't.
Right.
You could have done that, which is kind of how they died in the book, right? They were kind of killed off camera,
right? But they also, they killed his aunt.
Yeah,
died.
Oh yeah, that's right. Oh my gosh,
that's true. Yeah, they blew them up.
Oh yeah. There's another thing that kind of rung a little bit false. You killed my mother's sister.
My gosh, my family. It'd be my family.
Mine was a little.
My mother's sister.
Yeah, and
you killed my aunt's cousin's brother.
And when he said it, that everyone in the audience was like, "Yeah, what was her again?" Like,
I was like, you could sound a little more concerned.
How about you kill my family? How about
your life with all these hooligan guys she was shacking up with? But you killed my mother's sister,
or you blew up my home, or anything works.
There's a couple better options for that.
You blew up my whole neighborhood.
So, what about just from a casting standpoint? I don't know about you guys, but I'm a huge Star Wars nerd, so I love that they pulled the guy from Star Wars to be the villain. Like just that alone, I thought that was really cool, and I like that actor too. And I thought he did a good job, though. I agree with you; he was a little cartoony and a little less villainy than I wanted him to be.
A lot more villainy in Star Wars.
Yes, actually, you're right.
That's not the actor; that's the director and the writing, which is
yes, for sure. But what I did love, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong here, but I hadn't seen the oh my god, what are their names? The High Fives. I hadn't seen any of those actors before in anything.
No,
and I love that decision. I thought, and especially because the villain was from Star Wars, and so he just naturally seems like this much bigger, ominous. Actor.
Yeah,
and then I thought that was a really, really smart decision.
Yeah, and because you've got so many up and coming kids like from TV and such, also, I think that's something that a lot of movies don't really take advantage of anymore. Like everybody wants the newest kid from the newest TV show, so you don't get that sort of a whole blank slate of new talent that you used to get.
Yeah, which especially because it's an underdog story, it's so much better if you don't know that face. You know what I mean? You gain a lot of narrative authority when you do that, which is awesome.
Well, I hope that he does well, because that was a great film. There was nothing wrong with that movie.
I want to see it again.
I want to see it again.
Now that you say that, have you heard of a website called Box Office Mojo?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm gonna go look right now.
How's it doing? Box Office.
It says, it is doing, boys. It is.
Yeah.
What is it? Out for 9 days, and it's already at 391 million worldwide, which is really good.
Nice.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah. Domestic is 96. Foreign is 300, which is about right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's great.
Well, that's fantastic. Well, good job, Geekdom. Keep that movie going. Let's have more of those. That was
absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Michael, thank you so much for taking
what they can skip though? Don't bother making Armada. Did you read Armada, the second book by Klein?
No, but he's writing Ready Player 2 now.
Shut up. I did not know that. Are you serious?
I hope
true story.
Better than Armada.
Oh, wait, that reminds me. Have you guys seen, oh no, I'm blanking on the name now. It's a Netflix documentary about E.T., about the Atari E.T. game.
No.
Oh, I know that story pretty well, but I now have to go watch that.
You guys, so not only is it...
they dug all those up, right?
I know. That's what the whole documentary is about. And awesome. Ernest Cline, the author of Ready Player One, has like a huge role in it. Like he,
oh really?
Yeah, because he grew up playing Atari, and so he goes down to the dig site, and it's just very, very well done and really interesting. And they pull. I'm not going to spoil anything, but
all right, I had an Atari, and I had the ET game.
No, you did not.
I did, and it was god awful. But the Raiders of the Lost Ark game was awesome. Oh man, that was one of the best. So all right, Michael. Well, they're giving us the evil eye here. Thank you so much for taking us some time here out of your coffee break.
Yeah, no, of course. The Munchkin donuts were great as always.
Awesome. So we'll see you again on the main show here in about a few days.
Or will it be his twin brother? Stay tuned.
You are not gonna know.
Inquiring minds will find out.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me on, guys.
See you, Michael.
Thanks for purchasing a D6G Lost Chapter. Supporting the show helps it grow.